The air in the Premium Motors dealership smelled of Italian leather and unattainable wealth. When the glass door opened, leaving the mark of a greasy hand on the crystal, all eyes turned. Victoria Costa was an anomaly in that temple of luxury. Her t-shirt was soaked in oil, her hands carried the story of a full night's work, and her face, dirty and sweaty, was a testament to her profession. "Security! Get this woman out of here now!" The receptionist's voice echoed across the polished marble. Victoria felt the weight of collective disgust, the humiliation burning in her chest, but she remained calm. She was there for a reason. She needed a rare part for the engine of a truck that supported a family, and she would not be intimidated. The arrival of the owner, Arthur Vance, was like a hurricane of arrogance, wearing an expensive suit that contrasted violently with Victoria's appearance, his face contorted in fury upon seeing her. "What the hell is going on here? Why is there a beggar in my dealership?" he roared, his voice echoing through the showroom. The receptionist hurried to explain, but Arthur interrupted her with a cruel laugh. "This woman doesn't have money for a single screw. This must be some kind of scam." Victoria, however, remained firm, her straight posture an act of silent defiance. "Sir, I'm a mechanic. I came to pick up a part I ordered." The word mechanic provoked a new wave of laughter, even louder and more humiliating, that drew everyone's attention. To silence the jeers, Victoria pulled a folded and time-yellowed diploma from her back pocket. "Mechanical Engineering, University of Illinois, graduated with honors," she said, her voice clear and firm, extending the paper to Arthur. The laughter died instantly. The man's expression changed from mockery to confusion, and then to an even deeper irritation. He couldn't accept that he was wrong. "Even if this is true," he said, handing back the diploma with disdain, "a piece of paper doesn't mean competence. Anyone can buy one of these nowadays." That blow was more painful than the laughter. They weren't just doubting her appearance, but her mind, her journey, everything she had fought to achieve. They laughed at her clothes, mocked her profession, and invalidated her degree. But they don't know who they're messing with. If you believe that competence silences any prejudice, subscribe to the channel and like this video to see humiliation turn into an epic triumph. Victoria's armor of calm was forged in fire. Her passion was born at age 8 in the garage of her humble home when her father, Carlos, a mechanic with thick hands and a giant heart, showed her the engine of a vintage Ford. To her, the smell of grease was the perfume of safety, and the engine's roar a lullaby. There, in secret, father and daughter shared a forbidden world. He taught, she absorbed, but their joy was cut short by the fury of her mother, who saw in that passion a betrayal of female destiny. On an afternoon of flames and tears, her small overalls and toy tools were burned in the backyard, a cruel attempt to incinerate a dream that stubbornly refused to die. Years later, at 17, the ember of that passion reignited as an act of war. Against her family's wishes, Victoria enrolled in mechanical engineering at a top university. Her acceptance, which should have been a celebration, was met with a sentence from her mother: "You've just thrown your life away." The university was a battlefield. She was the only woman in a class of 200 men, a constant target for derogatory jokes and the condescension of professors who saw her as an aberration. In group projects, she was relegated to secondary tasks, as if her brain were incapable of understanding the beauty of physics and calculus. Every laugh, every doubt, every subtle act of sabotage served as fuel for her unshakable determination. The professional world proved to be even more brutal. Her first boss fired her, despite praising her competence, because customers refused to be served by a woman. The second psychologically harassed her, repeating that her place was at home. The third, and worst, was at a high-end import car workshop, where envious colleagues sabotaged her work, swapping parts so she would be fired for incompetence. The stain on her reputation left her with no options, forcing her to open a small workshop in her own backyard. That woman, standing dirty in premium motors, was no novice. She was a war veteran, a survivor of countless battles that had prepared her for this very moment, for this challenge, for this wager. Seeing that his insults didn't shake Victoria's serene fortress, Arthur decided to raise the humiliation to a new level, creating a spectacle from which she could not escape. A malicious glint appeared in his eyes. "You know what, Doctor?" he said, the word laden with a sarcasm that drew snickers from his mechanics. "I have a proposal for you." He walked across the showroom, his voice projected for all to hear. "My Ferrari 488 GTB has been sitting for 3 weeks, a problem that 5 of the best mechanics couldn't solve." He paused, savoring the moment, setting the stage for Victoria's fall. The car was not a job offer. It was a poisoned chalice, an impossible task designed to destroy her publicly. Then he announced the wager, and the terms were as cruel as his intention. "If you, the engineer with honors, can fix my car, I'll pay you $20,000 in your hand right now." The absurd amount hung in the air, shocking everyone. It was the price of a decent used car, a figure designed to underscore the impossibility of the task. "But," he continued, his smile widening, "if you can't, you will have to apologize to everyone in this room for wasting our time with this female mechanic nonsense of yours." The condition was the annihilation of her dignity, the public validation of the prejudice that had haunted her for her entire life. The injustice was palpable, an ugly, cruel animal let loose amidst the luxury of the dealership. The receptionist, Fernanda, saw her chance to end what she considered a farce. "I'm calling security to escort her out," she said loudly, phone already in hand. But before she could dial, Victoria's calm voice cut through the tension. "That won't be necessary." She took a step forward, and the room fell absolutely silent. "I accept the challenge." The acceptance was a shock. No one, least of all Arthur, expected it. The surprise on his face quickly gave way to sadistic delight. "You accept? Are you sure?" he mocked. "Because when you fail, and you will fail, everyone here will be a witness that a woman's place isn't in a workshop." He was trying with one last threat to make her back down. Victoria did not back down. Instead, she looked him straight in the eye and added her own condition. "I accept, but when I succeed, I want you to admit in front of everyone that you were wrong and that you misjudged me." Trapped in his own public posturing, Arthur had no choice but to agree. "Deal," he said, extending his hand. The handshake was a clash of two worlds. Her hand, calloused from hard work and dignity, his, soft and accustomed only to signing checks. As she was led to the workshop, Victoria walked through a gauntlet of malicious whispers, each comment a small knife. She wasn't going to fix a car, she was walking to her public execution. The Premium Motors workshop was a sanctuary of modern engineering. The floor gleamed like a mirror, and the state-of-the-art tools rested in their places with the precision of surgical instruments. In the center, under bright lights, the Ferrari 488 GTB rested like a sleeping red beast. The audience of curious onlookers, mechanics, and customers followed Victoria into the arena, all expecting the same outcome: failure. They saw her as an unprepared gladiator, about to be devoured. However, what they witnessed was something different. Victoria didn't approach the car with the hesitation of an amateur, but with the reverence of a devotee. Her eyes traced the vehicle's lines, not as someone seeing a problem, but as someone reacquainting with an old passion. The in-house mechanics, led by Raymond, watched her every move with a mixture of contempt and curiosity. He tried to intimidate her, listing the engine's complex specifications as if reciting a spell of impossibility. "V8 twin-turbo engine more complex than a NASA rocket," he scoffed. But Victoria ignored him. Instead of defending herself, she began to interrogate. "What were the exact symptoms?" she asked, her voice firm. Did you change the injection module? Obviously, Raymond replied. And the oxygen sensor? The fuel pump? To every question, an affirmative answer. She was methodically retracing their steps, but the audience began to notice that her questions were different, deeper, demonstrating a logic they hadn't considered. The moment that changed the atmosphere in the workshop was when she asked to start the engine. Everyone expected the familiar sound of failure. Victoria got into the car, and the contrast of her dirty clothes against the immaculate Italian leather was shocking. She turned the key and the V8 engine roared, but it was the roar of a wounded animal. To the others, it was confirmation of failure. To Victoria, it was the problem's confession. She heard what no one else could, a subtle vibration, an irregular pattern. That was like the defect's signature. She turned off the engine, got out of the car, and with a calm that defied logic, declared to the astonished audience, "I've found the problem." A wave of incredulous laughter, led by Arthur, swept through the workshop. It was impossible. The humiliation, they thought, was about to begin. Arthur's laughter echoed through the workshop, followed by the derisive chuckles of the other mechanics. "You found the problem in 5 minutes," he mocked, wiping a tear of mirth from his eye. "This woman is a comedian." Victoria, however, ignored the mockery. She walked back to the Ferrari's open hood, her calm a stark contrast to the chaos of disbelief around her. "The problem isn't where you looked," she said, her voice firm. Her hand, though dirty, moved with the precision of a surgeon, pointing to a tiny, almost imperceptible component. "It's here. This detonation sensor has an intermittent fault." Raymond, the head mechanic, snorted. "That's ridiculous. Detonation sensor wouldn't cause these symptoms." "On the contrary," Victoria replied, and her tone changed. She was no longer the humiliated intruder. She was the expert giving a lecture. "When this specific sensor fails intermittently, it sends incorrect data to the injection module. The module, in turn, tries to correct a combustion problem that doesn't exist, altering the air-fuel mixture." She paused, looking into Raymond's eyes. "This causes exactly the symptoms the car is presenting: power loss, acceleration failures, and excessive fuel consumption." The silence that followed was heavy. The other mechanics, who were laughing before, now listened with bewildered attention. She wasn't just guessing. She was giving a masterclass in engineering. But Victoria wasn't finished. She pointed to another part. "And there's more. You replaced the injection module, which was correct, but you made a rookie mistake." She scanned the workshop with her gaze, letting the suspense build. "You didn't update the software. Ferrari issued a mandatory update 6 months ago for this model, precisely to fix an incompatibility with the ignition system." The revelation was a gut punch to the Premium Motors team. It wasn't a hidden defect. It was a basic procedural failure. Arthur turned to Raymond, his face dark. "Is that true?" he asked. Raymond, pale, just stammered, I didn't know about that update." The power dynamic in the workshop had completely inverted. The mockery in Arthur's eyes was replaced by a growing concern. He no longer saw a woman covered in grease, but a professional who, in minutes, had exposed the incompetence of his entire team. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice now devoid of arrogance. "How do you know all this? How can you be so sure?" The question was no longer a taunt, but a genuine plea for answers. Victoria looked at him with the same firmness from the beginning. "Because I know what I'm doing." And with a decisive gesture, she closed the hood of the Ferrari. The dry thud of the metal echoed in the silence. A final word on the whole discussion. The bet was about to be won. Her knowledge silenced everyone's arrogance, but the final proof is yet to come. If you've ever felt the satisfaction of proving your worth when no one believed in you, share your story in the comments and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the moment this Ferrari will finally roar. With the right tools in hand, Victoria began to work under the watchful eyes of 20 people who, shortly before, had been awaiting her failure. Moving with the precision of a surgeon, she removed the faulty sensor. "Just as I suspected," she said, showing the part to Arthur. "Look at the serial number. Now compare it to the official Ferrari catalogue." On her tablet, she displayed the factory specification. The codes didn't match. "This part is a counterfeit." The word landed like a stone in the workshop. The problem wasn't a simple defect, it was fraud. The $20,000 bet suddenly became trivial in the face of this grave discovery. The mocking atmosphere dissipated, replaced by a cold, uncomfortable tension. The game had changed levels. Continuing her investigation, Victoria became an automotive detective. Every component she touched seemed to confess a crime. Upon removing the injection module, she pointed to a nearly hidden label. "Refurbished," she read aloud. "They installed a used, poorly repaired part in your car and sold it as new." She also pointed out electrical connections made with common solder, joints that created resistance and sent wrong signals to the car's computer. With each new piece of evidence, the jaws of the other mechanics dropped a little further. This wasn't incompetence. It was a deliberate and systematic scheme of deceit, a web of professional negligence that endangered a machine worth hundreds of thousands. The fury on Arthur's face was now directed not at Victoria, but at unknown traitors. "So, they deceived me. They installed fake parts on purpose?" he asked, his voice hoarse with rage. Victoria looked at him seriously. "It's worse than that, sir. It's likely that your original, very expensive parts were stolen to be sold on the black market and replaced with this garbage." The suggestion of theft, of such a deep violation of trust, left everyone breathless. Who would have done it? The question hung in the air as gazes began to shift suspiciously toward Raymond, who was sweating coldly in a corner of the workshop. At the peak of this tension, Arthur's cell phone rang. The call was from an unknown number, but the voice on the other end introduced itself with urgency. "Detective Martins, from the Gary Police Department. Mr. Vance, we've uncovered a large luxury auto parts theft ring. Your car is on our list of targeted vehicles." Arthur turned pale, hung up the phone, and looked at Victoria with an expression of pure awe. She hadn't just diagnosed a car, she had diagnosed an ongoing crime. Before he could speak, she anticipated him with the calm of someone who was always in control. "I know. I called the police and reported the suspected fraud before I even touched the first tool." The final revelation was the ultimate checkmate. The revelation that Victoria had alerted the police landed like a final bomb. While Arthur looked at her with admiration, panic took over Raymond's face. "Hey, I need to take care of something outside. I'll be right back," he stammered, moving toward the exit. But Victoria's sharp mind connected the dots instantly. "Mr. Vance, don't let him leave," she warned with a sharp voice. "He's involved. Him running is a confession." Too late. Hearing Arthur's shout to stop, Raymond broke into a desperate sprint, disappearing through the door and leaving behind the certainty of his betrayal. The workshop team watched in shock as a colleague they had trusted for years disintegrated before their eyes. With the traitor exposed, Victoria unraveled the entire conspiracy for a stunned Arthur. "Raymond was the informant," she explained with forensic logic. "He knew your routine, your travel schedule. He probably sabotaged something simple in your car before your trip to Gary, forcing you to stop at the exact workshop his accomplices run." The truth was devastating. The workshop in Gary wasn't efficient. It was opportunistic. They already knew what the problem was because they were the ones who created it, so they could steal your original parts and replace them with counterfeit junk. Arthur's rage mixed with a deep sense of violation. He hadn't just been deceived, he had been hunted and betrayed by one of his own men. Moments later, two men in suits entered the workshop. It was Detective Martins and his partner. As they identified themselves, all authority in the room shifted to them. "Are you the engineer who filed the report?" the detective asked, addressing Victoria with a respect she hadn't yet received. "There," She then presented her case, showing them the counterfeit parts, the shoddy soldering, the altered serial numbers. She spoke with the clarity of an expert, turning the workshop into a crime scene. The officers listened, impressed, as she built an irrefutable case. The woman who hours earlier had been treated like a vagrant was now the key witness and the expert the law needed. Before leaving with the evidence, the detective made Victoria a proposal that sealed her transformation. Ms. Costa, your technical knowledge is on a level we rarely see. The police department often hires freelance experts to analyze fraud in cases like this. It's work that requires precision and is well compensated. He handed her a card. Would you consider the possibility of working with us? The offer was surreal. In a few hours, she had gone from being a threat to be removed by security to being invited to consult for the police. A door she never imagined existed had just opened, a new path paved. By her own competence. After the police left, leaving behind a thoughtful silence, Arthur approached Victoria. All his arrogance had vanished, replaced by a raw and sincere humility. "Victoria," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I need to apologize for doubting you, for mocking you, for being a complete idiot, for thinking a woman couldn't be a brilliant mechanic." The confession was total. "You not only saved my car, you uncovered a crime and taught us all a lesson I will never forget. You are the most brilliant professional who has ever set foot in this workshop, and I treated you like nothing. I was wrong, deeply wrong." With the crime uncovered and the culprits exposed, Victoria turned back to the Ferrari. In front of a now silent and respectful audience, she performed the final repair, reprogramming the system with the mastery of an artist. The moment of truth arrived. She got in the car, turned the key, and the V8 engine roared, not like a wounded animal, but like a symphony of pure, perfect power. The sound filled the workshop, and the silence was broken by an explosion of sincere applause. Arthur, emotional, handed her the envelope with the $20,000. But Victoria, in a gesture that sealed her greatness, proposed, "Let's use this money to create a real training program for your team." The bet was no longer about money. It was about building a better future. In the months that followed, Premium Motors was reborn. Under Victoria's new partnership and technical leadership, the workshop became a center of excellence for Italian supercars, but its greatest transformation was cultural. New female mechanics, talented and full of potential, were hired, and the work environment became a rare example of respect and collaboration. Victoria's TV interview turned her into a national symbol, an inspiration for thousands of women in male-dominated fields. The most touching change, perhaps, was Fernanda, the receptionist, who, inspired by Victoria, traded her blazer for a jumpsuit and began her own training to become an automotive technician. Victoria's victories transcended the walls of the workshop. At the invitation of Ferrari itself, she traveled to Maranello, Italy, to work side by side with the engineers who designed the cars she loved so much, the pinnacle of a childhood dream. But the sweetest validation came from home. In a magazine article that named her one of the most influential women in the country, she read a statement from her mother, the same one who had once burned her dreams in the backyard. "Today I am proud of my daughter," the note said. "She has proven that a woman can be anything she wants to be." The oldest wound in her soul finally began to heal. The journey had begun with a cruel wager, with a man who believed that money could define a person's worth, but it ended with a much deeper lesson. Victoria didn't just fix a Ferrari, she fixed a broken culture, exposed a crime, inspired a new generation, and healed the wounds of her own past. She proved that the most powerful tool is not a wrench or a diagnostic scanner, but an unshakable faith in one's own competence and dignity. And she demonstrated that the most powerful engine is not the one made of steel and pistons, but the one that moves a person to fight for their dreams against all odds. If Victoria's journey of overcoming and her victory against prejudice has moved you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where you're watching from. Stories like hers prove that talent knows no barriers.